Good evening. Welcome to New Horizons, and welcome any new faces. Well done, fantastic turnout. If you do have a mobile phone, if you'd like to put it on silent, please, thank you. Right, a massive welcome to Andrew Johnson with climate change and chemtrails. What is happening in our skies? Andrew Johnson tonight invites us to check the evidence and set aside belief as we look at climate change, which is what we cause. Nah, only joking. And we'll pay for. Not joking. What are the drivers out there? Is someone messing with the weather? Andrew points to a phenomenon a lot are unaware of still, that of the chemtrails, as a possible weather modifier, or not. Highly alarming cover-up now starting to be uncovered. Please welcome Andrew Johnson.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thanks very much for inviting me back, and great to see everyone here tonight, and thanks very much to everyone for coming, of course, particularly those that have come a long way. I've got a lot of information to get through tonight. I think there's 170 slides, so I'm probably going to have to skip over some of them, I don't doubt. So what I'm going to try and look at, may have to skip over some of this, but this is the goal at this point. We're going to look at chemtrails, evidence hidden in plain view. We're going to look at aircraft traffic and trails, and this is my investigation, which is new, because I did present this a version of this presentation a few years ago, but since then I've done a bit more investigation and come out with at least some bits of useful information, let me put it that way. We're going to talk a bit about weather modification research, because there is weather modification research and it's quite a long history. We're going to mention Wilhelm Reich, orgone energy and cloudbusters. We're going to try and cover that. We're going to look at evidence for weather modification in action, which I think is getting, to be honest, it's getting pretty obvious right now, certainly to me. And we're going to look at psychological operations. And was that film itself, the Flash Gordon film, a piece of predictive programming? Possibly it was, having an earthquake machine or a machine that can trigger off volcanoes. Now, I'll mention right now, I don't think HAARP is, half of what people would blame it for. Not even a tenth. It's too public. So, I'm going to mention HAARP, but I think you should just more or less forget about HAARP, except to know that it's real and it's a defence installation. I don't think it's the cause of any of this stuff. It's too public. We're going to look at disinformation. So that's quite a substantial thing as well in this. We'll mention briefly legislation which explicitly mentions weather modification and or chemtrails. And we're going to look at the weather control which was used on 9/11, which is probably one of the only areas that, well, I'm about the only person, and Dr. Judy Wood, maybe one or two others, will talk about weather control used on 9/11, or the inference that is that. Almost nobody will talk about it, not even anybody who talks about chemtrails. They won't talk about 9/11, and I've got a very good example of this, which I'm going to play towards the end, which came up in the last few weeks. So, what is chemtrails? Well, maybe one or two in the audience don't know what this is. It comes really from the sort of contraction of the phrase chemical trail, the words chemical trail from aircraft. Some people prefer to use aerosol or persistent jet trail, as chemtrails are often automatically, if you use that word, you're a conspiracy theorist, I'm going to laugh at you, not going to listen to you. And this phenomenon is real, it's not theoretical, it's something that anybody can observe, given enough, a couple of weeks. You'll see it a couple of weeks, once or twice within a couple of weeks. Thought to have begun to appear mainly in the 80s and early 90s, although we have got video and photos going back further than that, which of something which might be called a chemtrail. One of the most ones that's become a little bit notorious is at the end of the Italian Job, which I think was made in '69, was it? The Michael Caine version, that is. There is actually a chemtrail or persistent jet trail right at the end of that, if anyone wants to look out for that. And I went and got the VHS tape to see if it had been added, and it was certainly in the VHS tape version of that. But there's actually very little direct information available, as I've come to argue the case, outside your own observations. A lot of the stuff that you read on the internet, it's basically unverifiable. Some of it I think is unproven. But I can show you that disinformation is actively being put out. And I think if that is the case, which it clearly is, something is being covered up. I'm just not precisely sure what it is. Just to mention some of the other researchers, I've corresponded with one or two of these people. Clifford Carnicom, he's got a good website, he's got quite a lot of good information. Rosalind Peterson, who promotes global warming and all that stuff, so I've got a little bit of doubts about her, but she's also collected a lot of documents about some of the US Air Force research into weather modification and things like that. Phil Morris, he did a bit of research, he's dropped out of the picture a bit now. He was from Cheshire, but I think he's moved now, went out to Israel and then came back. William Thomas wrote a book in the mid-90s. Wayne Hall has been active in Greece. I've corresponded with Wayne a few times, good guy. He's tried to put the issue before his local officials and bring that up to a sort of national level in Greece. Made a little bit of progress in that area. And then Scott Stevens, the former Idaho weatherman, he's also put together quite a lot of information, although again, surprisingly he won't talk about 9/11. And then another chap that I've corresponded with more recently, who's been quite a strong activist on the issue, is Max Bliss, and he's been driving around Europe in his van, which has chemtrails written on it and aeroplanes and painted on it and things like this, saying stop chemtrails. And then you go onto Facebook and there's loads and loads of groups, a lot of people are aware of the issue, but I think a lot of them, are not so open to new information as I would have hoped. Now, let's get one thing clear about contrails. Basically, what comes out the back of an aircraft is a contrail. That's all you should see. Now, contrail comes from burning of kerosene. Kerosene is a hydrocarbon. It mainly contains alkanes, which are made up of carbon, approximately 85%, hydrogen, approximately 12%, and there are some other compounds, like a bit of sulphur, and various other bits and pieces. And there is nitrogen and sulphur, approximately 1% or 2% each, respectively. Now, when kerosene burns, therefore, it can only form compounds that contain elements that were originally in the kerosene, or in the air that it burns in. Not surprisingly then, the main components that form when kerosene burns are carbon dioxide, this alleged greenhouse gas. You can all chuckle to yourselves if you want to believe that, but there's a whole other... Well, I'm going to mention a bit more about that, but I know it's been talked about here on several occasions. Sulphur dioxide, in small quantities, that's a toxic greenhouse gas which mixes with water to form acid rain. Sulphurous and sulphuric acid, that's H2SO3 and H2SO4, if you want the chemistry. And carbon monoxide, which is a toxic flammable gas, that's CO, one carbon atom, one oxygen atom. Toxic flammable gas, and it's responsible for some deaths which happen when the gas heating equipment is faulty. And then you get water. So in other words, you're mainly going to get carbon dioxide and water. And of course, when the trail of water is in the upper atmosphere, it's about -40 degrees centigrade, and so it freezes to form ice crystals, and that's the white trail that you see. But when we look at each of those compounds on the previous slide, water, sulphur dioxide, carbon monoxide, they're all colourless, right? So when kerosene burns, it would seem that the only visible thing we should see in the sky is the condensation, which, like our breath on a cold day, should disappear in a few tens of seconds or even a couple of seconds. And indeed, when a jet takes off, we can only see colourless compounds come out of the back. All we see is the hot air, you can see the refraction, and you get that sort of shimmering effect, like you see on a tarmac road on a hot day. That's the change in refractive index of the air, if you want a bit of the physics. So here we're going to see a little clip which I stole from Scott Stevens that he made a few years ago, and I'll have one or two of these later in the presentation. This is slightly peculiar. I've just looked at it, as you can see, a couple of times, because you've got an X here of two trails that have gone perpendicular to each other, so that they're staying, and this one is not staying. So why is that staying and that one disappearing? And when you get down to it, there's no particularly good explanation for this. Now, people will say, well, Andrew, it's because that plane is at, 37,000 feet, and that one's at 32,000 feet, so there's different layers of moisture in the atmosphere. So one leaves a trail and the other one doesn't. But when you start to try and pin people down on this, it all becomes a bit more vague. And I don't really know what the good answer is. It's unusual that the one that persists is in the form of an X, and the one that disappears is just a straight line. And we're going to explore this a bit more later in the presentation, but that's just a starting point. Something odd is going on here. Now, again, you'll see people saying, well, oh, you know, chemtrails, it's just all contrails, just forget about it. You know, it's just all contrails. Because we saw this started in the Second World War, you know, B-17 bombers over Europe, 1943. You'll see this picture posted and read. But look at all these trails, you know, lots of ordinary persisting trails. Contrails, these are, no such thing as chemtrails. This is a fairly typical statement, but look, what we're talking about is something that happened over 60 years ago. Aircraft engine technology has changed a lot since then. The composition of the fuel has changed a lot. I think now we're on JP8 jet fuel as a standard, when it's gone from JP1 to JP2, and they've changed the mixture of the fuel. I'm not going to talk a lot about that, because I don't think it's, well, it is important, but it's not as important as some people make it out, I would say. And these things were deliberately flying in formation because they were on a mission. So there was a reason for them flying in formation. You know, and I guess many of you have seen these grids. How do we get those grids? I'll talk a bit more about that. I'm just going to show you a quick selection of photographs. Some of these are quite old, and basically because I haven't, well, some of them are old, some of them are new. I've updated it a bit. I could update it loads more. 2004. What causes this? Battle Creek, Michigan. Can't even say it. Michigan. Just flick through these. February 18th, 2003. That's a typical one. I've got some of the links here. Noughts and crosses grid. A bit more interesting one where we're getting these being seen from space. They are appearing on satellite pictures. This is a bit more inexplicable. This was from Jeff Challenger's site, and he argued that there is so much material here, it couldn't possibly all have come from, from jet trails. I mean, where did all this mass come from is the question he asked. Well, I don't know. There's definitely something very odd going on. This is actually an interesting picture for me, because I took this April 2003, and it hasn't come out so well on this projection. Colours are a bit washed out. But if you look right in the centre, you'll see what's called a sundog. And you may have seen these where an angle of 22.5 degrees from the disk of the sun, you'll get ice crystals will reflect the light to the viewer. I was taking it for the sundog. I never even noticed these trails. You know, this is before I was thinking about chemtrails. So you can see these things and not see them at the same time. And so I've called it chemtrail blindness or trail blindness. And this was from, we had a day in 2007, 18th of October. I've got that documented on my website. We actually got the satellite photographs, and we got Keighley, Hertfordshire. I've got a load more, Leeds, Derby, a couple of other places. I've got a page on my website with more pictures. Ireland. Okay, I actually don't repeat this slide there. This is another one from 25th of March. My friend in Embsay took this and sent it to me. Suggestions of a grid again. This is Yorkshire. Paris, cross. This is the one that really woke me up, which I took, see the date there. Literally working on the computer, doing emails, usual thing. Looked out the window, there it was. There it was. Thought, blimey. And there are 9 intersecting trails. Now these things are only meant to persist for a couple of minutes. So how can it be that we had all these lines, these aircraft coming over my house within just a few minutes and intersecting at right angles, over here? What the hell was going on? And this is when I started writing a few letters. 9, I think it might even be 10, 9 separate trails, several of them intersecting. And then the other peculiar effect that people have alerted me to as well, and I've seen these, as you can see here, we've got these shadow effects. So you see the trail, and then the trail seems to sort of just disappear, and you get a shadow instead. It's some very strange stuff that you see. I still don't know what that is. I'll come back to this grid photo, because that's when I started asking questions, the sort of sunset grid, as I call it. Again, more examples. Dave Ellis took this, 2010, what are these semicircular trails, with things going off here. Why just these semicircles? This was at Blaneau Ffestiniog, down in near Llanberis. And the circle phenomenon, that's a newer one. Circles. Humberside, I took apart, this is a partial circle here. I was driving along over the Humber Bridge, saw this, got my camera out while I was driving. You can see the reflection of the lens in the window. Edinburgh, 2010. A chap in the Pyrenees, he sent me a whole sequence. Harrogate, 2007. Then we have this extraordinary picture from 2 years ago, alleged to be a NATO aircraft on an exercise. Oh really? What was it doing? What exercise involved it flying in a circle, leaving a trail? Huh? No answers. No real answers. That's from a Louth leader. Michael Kane took that picture. And on the same day, Kidderminster. Circles over Kidderminster. Exactly the same day. And indeed, this isn't very clear because I took it on my little old phone. It's only a 2 megapixel camera, not very good quality. Fairly early in the morning, about 8 o'clock, and I was against the light. You can see a bit of the circle there and a little bit here. That was over Nottingham. Same day. Same day. So we had circles of trails, and I received reports from 2 other locations, 16th of January 2012, of circular contrails. What's that about? Why are all these planes flying in circles on the same morning of the same day? What is going on? Another date, 29th of November 2012, that was near Hendon. Richard Hall sent me that picture that somebody sent to him. Again, these sort of semicircles or circles, photo by Amy Wild. Grimsby, what's going on there? Remember, this is all normal air traffic according to these deniers, that there's something going on. What you're seeing here is normal air traffic, according to some people. And Ashted, UK. And the gentleman in the audience took this and sent me that, gave me this last time I was here. It's like this weird spiral trail. God knows what caused that. And this was sent to me just yesterday. Just yesterday somebody sent me this. And I like the description. They said they watched this being done yesterday afternoon. You can see 3 o'clock. And Chris Marsh, he said it was like the Tholian web on Star Trek, if anyone remembers that episode. The Tholian web. And I know what he means because I remember that episode. So what the hell is going on? More anomalies. Again, this is not very clear. This is actually a rainbow, but it's a straight line. This is a straight line at an angle. I've got all these on my website, and these sort of sunbeams coming through it. This persisted for about 20 minutes. 20 minutes, this was in the same place. It's weird. 2009. Why are these clouds kind of, there's a focal point down towards the horizon. If you look at the lines, they're all focused down to the horizon. What's that about? Why are we getting these straight line why is the geometry in the clouds? Huh? This is not right. Same here. This was outside the school where my son and daughter go to. This was June 2009. It's a linear cloud bank. No cloud. There's a trail there, look. Cloud here. And I've got another one. Linear cloud bank. That is a ruler straight edge line of cloud. Huh? Christmas Day 2007. What the hell is going on? Okay. Well, I'm going to skip over these because I think it's clear from that we're not looking at just contrails. Or even if they are just contrails, that they're in patterns that contrails shouldn't be in. Something else going on. Broken trails, that's from Dave Ellis again, similar to the one. You've got this shadow effect here. Now, I'm going to play a little clip here. This is an aerial, allegedly, what this is a KC-10 military aircraft on a mission, and I'm going to play a little video clip. So you see the trail being switched, or apparently being switched on and off.